10 days ago, Arizona Democrat Adelita Grijalva won a special election to fill her late father's congressional seat by 40 points. But Republican Speaker of the House Mike Johnson has still not allowed her to be sworn into office. Now, Republicans say that it's because the House has not returned to a normal session. But it just so happens that once sworn in, Grijalva would be the crucial 218th signature on the bipartisan petition to force a House vote on releasing the Epstein Files.
You announced this week that the House will not be in session until the government reopens. And as you know, many Democrats have looked at your move. They say the House is not in session because you don't want to swear in this newly elected senator, the Democratic Congresswoman from Arizona, who would be a critical vote to releasing the Epstein Files. How do you respond?
It's totally absurd.
Charge?
This has nothing to do with that. It's another red herring. The reason the government is closed is because Chuck Schumer and 43 of his Democrat colleagues in the Senate have decided now to vote multiple times to keep the government closed.
What's up, everybody? Major retired Richard Ojeda here, and Mike Johnson, the so-called Christian nationalist Speaker of the House, straight out of the Bible Belt, loves to preach about morality and Jesus. This do as I say, not as I do hypocrite pushes legislation to control what Americans watch and do in their own homes. But now he's caught in a power play so scandalous, even he can't spin his way out of it.
Let me ask you about some of the issues at play here, because President Trump, the White House, says it's preparing to potentially lay off thousands of federal workers. That's never been done before in a shutdown. Do you support laying off thousands of federal workers as a part of this shutdown?
We haven't seen the details yet about what's happening, but it is a regrettable situation
but
that the president does not want. The president asked Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries in the Oval Office about a week ago, please don't do this. Please keep the government open and we'll work out all these issues that we have plenty of time to work out.
He's blocking Adelita Grijalva, a newly elected representative from Arizona, from being sworn in because she's a 218th vote that would force the release of key Epstein-related files. That decision leaves southern Arizona unprotected and unheard. This isn't about faith or purity. It's about the darkness that festers inside men like Mike Johnson, men in power who use religion as a shield for their own corruption.
Representative, you were elected 2 weeks ago. Why do you think you have not been sworn in by the Republican Speaker of the House yet?
And I am going to be the 218th signer to the discharge petition. So that is the only thing that most people are pointing to. I mean, I am a woman of color, a Chicana from Tucson. None of those factors, I don't think, are reasons why I wouldn't be being sworn in, other than pointing to the Epstein Files and the complete lack of transparency from this administration in releasing those files. The other is Speaker Johnson has closed down votes in the recent past to avoid a vote on the Epstein Files.
And while Johnson is blocking Adelita Grijalva, denying Southern Arizona a voice in Congress, guess where he is? Not in the chamber doing his job, not negotiating to reopen the government. No, the House is shut down, and Mike Johnson has taken himself and his caucus on a taxpayer-funded vacation. Federal workers face furloughs. Essential workers labor without pay. And Johnson, he's pointing the finger at Democrats while cashing your check. They know their base is so conditioned to swallow the talking points that they'll blame anyone but the people actually in charge. That's the game. Soft-handed politicians like Mike Johnson wouldn't last a week living like the people that they're hurting. No broadband, no steady paycheck, no safety net. Grifters like Johnson live in privilege while the rest of the country pays for their theatrics. Meanwhile, people at home are doing what Congress refuses to do, showing up. Single parents are picking up double shifts to cover missed paychecks. Veterans are helping one another keep the lights on. Neighbors are running food drives for furloughed workers. The public is holding the line while Washington plays games. That's the real story you won't hear from Moses Mike and his red herring routine. And that is where it all starts to unravel for Moses Mike, because NBC's Kristen Welker wasn't having it. She looked him straight in the eye on Meet the Press and asked what every American watching this shutdown wants to know. Why isn't Congress working? Why isn't the newly elected representative from Arizona sworn in? That's not a gotcha question. That's the job. And what does Mike Johnson do? He reaches for his high school debate team magic word, red herring. Here's the funny part. A red herring is a distraction. It's something you toss out when you don't want to deal with the real issue. The phrase comes from an old story about dragging a smoked fish across a trail to throw hunting dogs off the scent. That's what the Speaker of the House just did on national television. Dragged a big shiny fish across the trail so nobody would notice the mess that he left behind. It's the same move mystery writers use to trick readers. In the Da Vinci Code, there's a character named Bishop Aringarosa. His name literally means red herring. The whole book, readers think he's the villain, the mastermind, until it turns out he's just a decoy. Sound familiar? That's Moses Mike Johnson. He's the red herring of Congress, standing front and center, waving his Bible, talking morality, while the real problems go unsolved behind him. And here's the part people need to understand. This isn't new for Mike Johnson. Before he was a speaker, he helped lead the legal effort to overturn the 2020 election, whipping House Republicans to sign on to lawsuits that had no basis in fact. He spent his career turning culture wars into procedural weapons. Shutdowns, delays, moral panics, blocking votes. That's not an accident. That's the brand. The Bible verses and the red herrings are just window dressing. The goal is always the same. Distract you from what they're actually doing with your government while blaming somebody else. This is the pattern. When Trump floated using federal troops against protesters, Johnson defended him. When culture war bills to regulate sex, speech, and the internet came up, Johnson carried them. Over and over, it's the same tactic. Moral panic up front, procedural sabotage in the back. And now comes Project 2025, the blueprint to make all of this permanent. Purge the federal workforce and replace them with loyalists. Gut environmental protections. Shred labor rules. Crush oversight agencies like FEMA, NOAA, and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Rip power away from communities and hand it to the very billionaires who fund this movement. While you're watching them rail about porn and prayer, they're dismantling the government piece by piece. This isn't abstract. Every shutdown they engineer means federal workers without paychecks. Every agency they cripple means slower disaster response, weaker food safety, fewer consumer protections. Farmers lose support, veterans lose benefits, families lose stability, and the people orchestrating it all fly home on taxpayer-funded flights and call it leadership and blame the Democrats. That's the playbook. Morality as a shield, distractions as a tactic, power grabs as policy, and if we don't call it out, the smoke and mirrors and the theatrics will become the new normal. We've seen this movie before. Every time the plot's the same. A crisis they created, a scapegoat they invent, a distraction they sell. They call it governing, but it's a con. One built on keeping Americans too divided and too exhausted to notice the pattern. They talk about faith while taking your future. They promise purity while spreading corruption, and every single clue points to the same place. The trail of red herrings leading right back to the speaker's desk. The truth is, this whole saga has been one long detective story. Every clue, every speech about purity, every prayer breakfast photo op, every shutdown stunt leads back to the same motive. Control, not service, not faith, just power. And once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Johnson is not just using a distraction. He is the distraction. Mike Johnson is the Bishop Aringarosa of this operation, the pious front man who was never the mastermind, just a decoy waving a flag and quoting scripture while the real agenda marched on behind him. And just like a Scooby-Doo episode where the villain gets caught, the mask finally comes off. And there he is, the Speaker of the House, the red herring of Congress himself, Mike Johnson. Mike, get your sorry ass back to work for the American people. Quit being a snot-nosed MAGA crybaby and swear Adelita Grijalva in now. And that's what needs to happen. Sappers clear the way, airborne all the way.